Let me tell you something that might change the way you see attraction forever. It's not about being prettier, it's not about being more available, and it's definitely not about trying harder. The real magnetic power that makes a man chase you is the energy you embody when you stop chasing him. Because here's the truth. People chase what feels valuable, scarce, and self-assured. And the moment you become the prize in your own life, everything shifts. Let's go deeper into this idea of choosing yourself first, because this is where everything begins. So many people walk into dating with one quiet, unspoken question humming in the background: will he choose me? And that question shapes their behavior in ways they don't even realize. They respond a little faster than they want to. They agree to plans that don't fully work for them. They soften boundaries. They silence preferences, all in the hope that if they're agreeable enough, desirable enough, accommodating enough, they'll be selected. But here's the shift that changes the entire dynamic. The moment you stop asking whether he will choose you and start asking whether he deserves to be chosen by you, that energy is different. It stands differently. It speaks differently. It moves differently. When you choose yourself first, it means your life is not on pause waiting for someone else to validate it. Your happiness is not sitting in his inbox. Your self-worth is not tied to how quickly he replies. Your mood is not determined by whether he confirms Friday night plans. You already have a life that matters. You already have standards that mean something. You already have direction. And when someone enters your world, they are entering something that's in motion. That's magnetic. Because when a man senses that you are fulfilled, that your time is valuable, that your world is rich and layered and meaningful, he doesn't feel like he's doing you a favor by being there. He feels lucky to be included. And here's what's fascinating. The more you center your life around a man too early, the more pressure he feels. Suddenly, he's responsible for your excitement, your entertainment, your emotional stability. That weight is heavy, and heavy things are not chased, they're avoided. But when you are grounded in your own purpose, your own friendships, your own passions, you remove that pressure. You're not gripping, you're inviting. There's a quiet confidence in a woman who says, "I'd love to see you Friday. I'm free after 7. Not rearranging her entire world, not canceling on friends, not overextending, simply offering space within a life that already exists. That communicates self-respect. And self-respect is deeply attractive because it signals emotional maturity. It tells him that if he steps into your world, he's stepping into something stable, not something that will collapse if he pulls back slightly. Choosing yourself first also means honoring your feelings without abandoning your standards. If something doesn't sit right with you, you don't ignore it just to keep him comfortable. If he's inconsistent, you don't overcompensate by trying harder. You observe, you assess, you decide. That is power. And power isn't loud, it's calm. It doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, it doesn't convince, it evaluates. When you choose yourself, you stop trying to prove your worth. You start embodying it. You don't oversell. You don't audition. You don't perform. You show up as you are, and you allow him to rise to meet that level. And here's something crucial. Choosing yourself first doesn't mean being cold. It doesn't mean being distant or unavailable. It means you are warm, open, and receptive, but not desperate. There's a difference between wanting someone and needing someone. Wanting says, "I'd love this connection." Needing says, "I can't be okay without this." One is magnetic, the other is draining. When a man senses that you want him but don't need him, he feels both desired and challenged. He knows he has to invest. He knows he has to step up. He knows he has to bring something real to the table. And that's when pursuit begins naturally, because the truth is, people chase what they feel they could lose. If you are constantly overavailable, constantly accommodating, constantly signaling that you'll be there no matter what, there is no tension, no uncertainty, no risk. But when you are centered in yourself, when you have your own rhythm, your own priorities, your own joy, there's a subtle understanding that if he doesn't show up well, you will continue living beautifully without him. That's not a threat, it's just reality. And reality is compelling. So build the life that excites you, deepen your friendships, pursue the goals that light you up, protect your time, protect your energy, speak your truth, hold your standards. Let him feel that he is stepping into a world that already thrives. Because when you choose yourself first, you stop chasing love, and love starts chasing you. Now let's talk about something that quietly amplifies or destroys attraction before you even realize it's happening. Emotional self-control. I want you to think about the early stages of dating. You meet someone you like, there's chemistry, there's excitement, And suddenly your mind starts racing ahead of reality. You're analyzing response times, replaying conversations, wondering what he meant by that one line, checking your phone more than you'd like to admit. Here's the truth. The moment your emotions start running the show, your power starts slipping away. Magnetic energy isn't about suppressing feelings, it's about mastering them. There's something incredibly attractive about someone who feels deeply but moves calmly. Someone who can experience excitement without letting it spill over into anxiety. Someone who can enjoy connection without immediately trying to secure it. Oversharing too soon often comes from a place of wanting intimacy instantly. You want to fast forward the bond. You reveal your entire history, your deepest wounds, your biggest fears within days. And while vulnerability is powerful, timing is everything. Real intimacy is layered, it unfolds. When you give someone the entire book before they've earned the first few chapters, you rob the connection of discovery. Mystery isn't about playing games, it's about allowing someone to gradually earn access to you. And that earning process, that's where pursuit lives. The same goes for over-texting or over-explaining. When there's a slight shift in his energy, the instinct might be to close the gap immediately. Send another message, clarify what you meant, ask if everything's okay, smooth it over. But here's the thing, constant emotional reassurance seeking signals fear, and fear is not magnetic. Calm is magnetic. When you don't react to every small change, you communicate strength. When he takes a little longer to reply and you continue with your day instead of spiraling, you communicate stability. When he seems slightly distant and you don't immediately chase him for clarity, you create space for him to lean back in. Space allows people to feel their own desire. If you're always filling the silence, he never has to wonder, he never has to miss you, he never has to step forward. Emotional self-control is the ability to pause, to sit with uncertainty without trying to eliminate it instantly, to let moments breathe. And that pause is powerful. Think about it. When someone reacts impulsively, double texting in frustration, confronting prematurely, demanding reassurance, it creates tension. It feels heavy. It feels urgent. But when someone responds with measured calmness, it creates intrigue. It feels secure. It feels safe. And safety is deeply attractive. Now, this doesn't mean tolerating poor behavior. It doesn't mean ignoring red flags. Emotional control is not emotional suppression. If someone consistently disrespects you, you address it or you walk away. But you do so from a grounded place, not from panic. There's a difference between saying, "Why haven't you texted me? Are you losing interest?" and saying, "I enjoy consistent communication. If that's not your style, that's okay, but it matters to me." One is reactive, the other is centered. When you are centered, your words carry weight. When you are reactive, your words feel charged. Mystery naturally flows from emotional steadiness. When you don't reveal every thought the second you have it, when you don't broadcast every insecurity, when you don't overanalyze out loud, you create an aura of composure. And composure is compelling. It makes someone lean in. It makes them curious. It makes them want to understand you more deeply. If everything is immediately available, every feeling, every plan, every reassurance, there's nothing left to uncover. But when you allow things to unfold gradually, connection becomes an experience rather than a transaction. Here's what most people don't realize. Attraction thrives in a certain level of uncertainty. Not chaos, not games, but space. When a man feels that he doesn't completely have you figured out yet, that he hasn't fully earned access, that there are layers still waiting to be discovered, his investment increases. And that only happens when you resist the urge to over-deliver emotionally too soon. Emotional self-control is attractive because it signals that you trust yourself. You trust that you don't need to force memento. You trust that you'll be okay, regardless of the outcome. That trust in yourself radiates outward. And when someone feels that you are not clinging, not grasping, not desperately trying to secure them, they relax. They pursue more naturally. They invest because they want to, not because they feel pressured to stabilize you. So breathe, slow down, let moments land without reacting instantly, because the woman who can feel everything and still move with calm certainty is the woman no one forgets. Now let's talk about standards, because this is where attraction either rises or quietly dies. So many people say they have high standards, but standards are not what you say you want. Standards are what you tolerate. You can tell me you want consistency, effort, clarity, respect, But if you accept last-minute texts at 10 p.m. asking you up, if you rationalize disappearing acts, if you keep giving chances to someone who keeps giving excuses, then your standards are theoretical. And attraction responds to what's real, not what's stated. Here's something powerful to understand. When you tolerate low investment, you subconsciously signal low perceived value. Not because you are low value, but because you're communicating that access to you is easy. Human nature does not fiercely pursue what is easily secured without effort. When someone feels they can give you the bare minimum and still keep you, they will. Not because they're evil, not because they don't like you, but because people rise or fall to the level of expectation placed on them. High standards are not about arrogance. They are about clarity. They say, this is how I expect to be treated. Not in a dramatic way, not in a demanding way, simply in a calm, unwavering way. And calm conviction is incredibly attractive. There is something magnetic about a woman who doesn't argue for respect. She simply requires. It. If a man cancels last minute without a genuine reason and no effort to reschedule, you don't explode. You don't send a paragraph explaining your disappointment. You simply adjust your investment. You become less available. You redirect your energy. That shift speaks volumes because high standards are enforced through action, not speeches. When you continue giving warmth and access to someone who is inconsistent, you dilute your own value. But when you subtly pull back in response to low effort, you create a consequence. And consequences create awareness. Now he feels the difference. Now he senses that your attention is not automatic. And that awareness often sparks pursuit. Here's the deeper truth. People chase what they fear losing. If you are always there regardless of behavior, there is no fear of loss. There is comfort, and comfort without investment breeds complacency. But when someone understands that your presence in their life is conditional upon mutual effort, they step up or they step out. Either way, you win. Because high standards filter. They protect your time, they protect your energy, they protect your emotional well-being. And here's what's interesting. Men who are genuinely confident and emotionally mature are not intimidated by standards. They are drawn to them. Why? Because standards create clarity. A man who wants something real does not want to guess what you expect. He wants to know the bar and then rise to meet it. The only people who are threatened by standards are the ones who plan to underperform. Let that sink in. When you lower the bar to keep someone, you don't create security, you create resentment. Because deep down, you know you accepted less than you deserved. And resentment erodes attraction faster than rejection ever could. High standards also shape how you respond to mixed signals. If someone says we're not ready for anything serious, but continues to enjoy all the benefits of your time, affection, and attention. Standards ask a simple question. Does this align with what I want? If it doesn't, you don't try to convince them to change. You don't audition harder. You don't try to be the exception. You accept the information and you adjust. That adjustment is power, because chasing clarity from someone who has already shown inconsistency keeps you in reaction mode. But calmly stepping back and saying, that's not for me, puts you back in control. And control, real grounded control over your own choices, is magnetic. Standards are also about self-perception. When you genuinely believe you are worthy of effort, you don't feel guilty for expecting it. You don't feel too much for wanting consistency. You don't apologize for desiring respect. You normalize it. And when something is normalized, it becomes the baseline. Imagine two scenarios. In one, you're grateful for scraps of attention. In the other, you're appreciative of real effort, but unmoved by crumbs. Which woman feels more compelling? Which dynamic feels more charged? The one who can walk away from almost right is the one who creates space for fully right. And here's the final piece. High standards are not about making someone chase endlessly. They're about ensuring that if someone chases, they're chasing with intention. You are not trying to exhaust someone into loving you. You are creating a standard that only someone serious will meet. And when you hold that line calmly, consistently, without drama or apology, you become the standard they have to rise to reach. Now let's talk about confidence. Real confidence, not the loud kind, not the performative kind, not the kind that's trying to convince the room of something. I'm talking about the quiet, grounded comfort in your own skin that changes the way people feel around you. Because here's the mistake so many people make. They think magnetism comes from perfection. if I just look better, if I just say the right thing, if I just never make a mistake, if I just become more impressive. But perfection doesn't create attraction. Comfort does. There is something deeply compelling about a woman who is at ease with herself. She's not scanning the room for approval. She's not over-editing every sentence before it leaves her mouth. She's not shrinking herself to make someone else more comfortable. She simply is. And that isness is powerful. When you are comfortable in your own skin, you give other people permission to relax. There's no pressure to perform around you, no sense that they have to constantly validate you. Your presence feels steady, and steadiness is rare. Think about how many interactions are filled with subtle tension, people trying to impress, trying to be liked, trying not to say the wrong thing. Now imagine someone who isn't playing that game, someone who laughs freely, who admits when she doesn't know something, who owns her quirks instead of apologizing for them. That's refreshing. Confidence isn't about dominating a conversation. It's about not being afraid of silence. It's not about being the most attractive person in the room. It's about not comparing yourself to everyone in it. When you stop competing, you start radiating. And here's something important. Insecurity often shows up in subtle ways. Over-explaining, fishing for compliments, downplaying your achievements so you don't seem too much, agreeing with opinions you don't actually share just to keep harmony. Each of those moments chips away at your presence, but when you speak your mind calmly, without aggression, without apology, you establish depth. You show that there's substance behind the surface. And substance is genetic. A man might initially notice your appearance, but he stays intrigued by your energy. And energy is shaped by how you feel about yourself. If you constantly need reassurance, he feels the weight of that. If you constantly doubt your worth, he starts subconsciously questioning it too. Not because it's true, but because you're signaling uncertainty. But when you move through the world with quiet assurance, you send a different message. I know who I am, I like who I am, and I'm not here to beg you to agree. That's powerful. Now let's be clear, confidence doesn't mean you never have insecurities. Everyone does. The difference is whether you let them drive your behavior. You can feel nervous and still show up. You can feel unsure and still speak. You can feel vulnerable and still hold your posture. Confidence is behavioral. It's how you act despite what you feel. And the more you act from self-respect, the more genuine confidence grows. There's also something incredibly attractive about someone who celebrates her own life, who talks about her passions with light in her eyes, who doesn't minimize her success to make someone else comfortable, who isn't afraid to take up space. When you own your story, your wins, your flaws, your lessons, you become real. And real beats perfect every single time, because perfection is intimidating and distant, but authenticity is relatable and inviting. When you laugh at your own awkward moments instead of cringing, you demonstrate resilience. When you admit you care instead of pretending to be detached, you demonstrate emotional strength. Detachment isn't confidence. Indifference isn't power. Comfort is. The woman who is truly magnetic isn't trying to be the cool girl. She isn't trying to outshine everyone. She isn't trying to craft an image. She's present, she listens fully, she responds thoughtfully. She expresses herself honestly. And here's what happens when you reach that level of comfort. You stop chasing validation. You no longer need every interaction to prove something about you. You don't spiral if one person doesn't see your value. You don't internalize every rejection as a verdict on your worth. You understand something deeper, that attraction is subjective, but self-worth is not. And that understanding changes how you date. It changes how you flirt. It changes how you walk into a room. You're not there to be chosen. You're there to connect. And if the connection isn't mutual, you don't crumble, you pivot. That flexibility, that emotional steadiness, that refusal to abandon yourself for approval, that is the essence of confidence. And when a man feels that he's with someone who is secure, expressive, and unapologetically herself, something shifts inside him because confidence doesn't chase, it attracts. And the woman who is completely comfortable being herself becomes unforgettable. Now let's talk about something that feels counterintuitive, especially when you really like someone. Pulling back. When you feel chemistry, when you feel potential, when you feel that spark, your instinct might be to lean in harder, to text more, to initiate more, to reassure more, to show him clearly and consistently that you're interested. And there's nothing wrong with showing interest, but there is something powerful about restraint, because attraction doesn't grow when one person does all the emotional labor. It grows when both people invest. If you are always the one initiating plans, always the one checking in, always the one escalating the connection, you may think you're building momentum, but what you're actually doing is removing his opportunity to step forward. And when someone doesn't have to step forward, they don't feel the same sense of pursuit. Here's W. Many people misunderstand. Pulling back is not a game. It's not manipulation. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about creating space for him to show that he does. When you overfunction in the early stages, overgiving, overplanning, overconfirming, you accidentally communicate, "I'll carry this." And when you carry it, he doesn't have to. But when you allow silence to exist without rushing to fill it, when you allow a plan to hang in the air without immediately locking it down yourself, when you allow him to wonder what you're doing instead of broadcasting every detail, you create tension. And tension, in healthy doses, fuels attraction. Think about the psychology of investment. People value what they put effort into. If he plans the date, anticipates seeing you, thinks about what to say, wonders when he'll hear from you again, he's emotionally investing. But if everything is handed to him effortlessly, if your time and attention are always guaranteed, there's no internal buildup, no anticipation, no chase, pulling back simply means returning to your center. It means continuing to live your life instead of orbiting around his. If he hasn't texted yet today, you don't send 3 messages to compensate. You go to the gym, you see your friends, you focus on your work, you let him come to you, and here's the critical piece. You're not pulling back to punish, you're pulling back to observe. Does he lean in when you create space? Does he initiate when you stop over-initiating? Does he rise when you stop over-functioning? If he does, you have reciprocity. If he doesn't, you have information. Either way, you gain clarity. Too often, people try to secure affection by increasing effort. But real security comes from seeing whether someone chooses to invest when given the chance. You cannot measure his interest if you're doing all the work. Now, let's address the fear underneath this. The fear says, if I pull back, he'll lose interest. But if reducing your effort slightly causes him to disappear, then his interest was being sustained by your effort, not his desire. And that's not a foundation, that's maintenance. You don't want to maintain